Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Leadership Now with me, Dan Pontefract. Today in our house, Dr. Neri Karra Sillaman. Dr. Sillaman, so good to see you. A short bio. Actually, I'd like to go really deep with your bio. It's fantastic. And then we're going to get some great questions about you, your background, your leadership, and interestingly, how leadership and purpose and sustainability play a part in the fashion industry. So, Dr. Sillaman, distinguished academic, entrepreneur, and author, known for her expertise in business sustainability and leadership. She got over 20 years of experience in the fashion and luxury sector. Dr. Sillaman has established herself as a strategy consultant, a public speaker, and author that specializes in business longevity, resilience, and sustainability. That's the trifecta, I think. She's the founder of a global multi-million dollar sustainable luxury leather goods brand, which manufactures her eponymous label as well as leading Italian luxury brands. She's the author of an award-winning book called Fashion Entrepreneurship: The Creation of the Global Fashion Business. In addition to being a fashion entrepreneur, she's an academic with multiple postings all over the place, currently as well as an entrepreneur expert at the Saïd Business School at University of Oxford. She consults for both emerging and established fashion brands through her consultancy firm, Moda Métiers. And her passion lies in understanding the pillars of business longevity and how resilience underpins thriving enterprises and lives. She's guest lectured for places like Apple, Credit Suisse, as well as institutions like the London School of Economics, Royal College of Art, Imperial College of London. She received her PhD from the University of Cambridge and her master's from Sabancı University in Istanbul. Oh my gosh, how good to see you. It has been a while. Neri, first I want to get into sort of your journey. Maybe people don't know, and so I wanted to spend some introductory time there, from Bulgaria to
Sure.
refugee to who you are. So let's start there as a child, Bulgaria, and then take us through a little bit of that journey, and we'll get into sort of your current state of leadership.
Sure. I was born in Bulgaria, basically in a ethnically Turkish family. And in the 1980s, the communist Bulgarian government decided to carry out an assimilation process against the Turkish ethnic minorities living in Bulgaria. That's how I can explain it. So what that meant is that we were forced to change our names. Our school were converted to these name-changing stations, and cars covered in these very thick cloth will come take you, and they will show you a very thick book of names that were approved by the communist government, and you basically change your name. My name was changed 7 times because my parents will pick a name that sounded a little bit Turkish, and eventually, it will just keep getting rejected. In the end, in 1989, the Bulgarian government basically said, now it's time for anyone who feels Turkish to leave the country. But my whole family, even my great-grandparents, have been born in Bulgaria. So I can't say we even felt Turkish in some ways. We're just ethnically Turkish. But when we immigrated along with 360,000 Bulgarians of Turkish ethnicity, and we landed at the border with only 2 suitcases, the language and the culture is completely different. So it was certainly a shock to the system. And I was 11 years old at the time. It was quite a challenging time, quite a jarring moment, I would say, but it was also a moment where I remember this very, very distinctly, because we were put in refugee camps at the border that were set up by the Turkish government. And there were so many people all around us, and my father running with the 2 suitcases, screaming at the border to finally we made it. And I looked around me and I said, if one day I want to have a good life and create a better life for my family, I really, really need to get a good education. And this was a very, very clear decision, very clear idea, almost not an idea, it's actually a vision. And I talked about it in one of my talks, because I say, when you have a very clear vision, it can really pull you forward from whatever situation you may find yourself in. And it doesn't mean it's going to be easy, or that you suddenly, everything is just, you make a decision and you suddenly get a good education. I worked very hard for it, despite the odds, because my parents eventually, we had no papers. My dad worked as an illegal cab driver, construction worker. My mom is a cleaner in a medical factory. And I went to school with 83 students in one classroom.
Oh my gosh.
And we usually didn't have a teacher even come. So you just, these classes there were no English teacher, there was no math teacher. You were supposed to learn math, but there is no teacher, but you still go to school.
But you turned into a classroom of autodidacts, and assuming you're teaching yourself. But okay, so I mean, you're so young, your life has been turned upside down. You go from what you knew to being ostracized to a whole other country, Istanbul, and the border of Turkey, that for that matter, and I've been, is not Bulgaria. It's not. There's very different ways of operating, I suppose, like a culture. So you make a pact to yourself. If I want to not live this way, whether it's in refugee camp or just being stuck, you make a commitment to yourself about education. And you certainly have flourished when it comes to education, multiple degrees, a doctorate, of course. But somewhere along the way, I'm assuming, Neri, that this notion of fashion and entrepreneurship with sustainability and a sense of purpose and meaning and vitality for the planet also intersect. So where did that happen between Bulgaria, Istanbul, and growing up as a teenager in a classroom of 83 people?
Very, very good question. I really think it has to do with my upbringing. And I actually wrote an article for B Corp, because we are B Corp-certified. When I am asked this question, I also had to really understand why the business was shaped this way. It has to do, first of all, with being an immigrant. We didn't have many resources when we were starting the business. We didn't have any capital, but I did work as a translator from the age of 16. And I was taking the Turkish leather manufacturers from Istanbul to Italy. My father was actually selling their leather wallets and making commission out of them. My job was to be the translator. This way, I really understood how the industry works from a practical standpoint. It wasn't just seeing a bag at a shopping window. It was really understanding that you have to buy the leather. You have suppliers. Who are these suppliers? How things are made? And really seeing the craftsmanship, the effort that goes into making something. This was very important. Growing up in Bulgaria, my grandfather also would always tell us, and we were growing up in a very poor family. It's communism, you are ethnic minority, you don't have the resources that are available to other families necessarily. So self-sustainability, being self-sustaining, was a very important factor growing up. So we grew up everything ourselves, our fruits, vegetables, even our chickens, everything was in nature. And you respected nature. And that comes really from my childhood. Almost lack of resources make you really appreciate and understand and value everything. So when it was time to start the business, I had the idea at University of Miami during one of my courses, which was to write a business plan. And I thought, okay, I'm going to, let's imagine that we are going to start a business. How will I make it possible? How will that be? And going to the Italian suppliers, asking them for the leather that they are discarding, for the leather that they are not using, leather offcuts. At the time, nobody was doing this. And it was just simply because we didn't have capital, we didn't have resources. And this idea of respecting nature, this comes from my childhood, really, and from my background. I didn't learn it at the university. Really, at the time, sustainability wasn't really this concept that people talked about. If even, I don't know, even 20 years ago, if someone said, I have a sustainable brand, you think, you know, they are doing something as a hobby. It's not really multi-level or a very high-growing brand. So we went to our suppliers, and relationships that you build with your suppliers, your employees, are very much part of sustainability for me as well. Because often when we talk about sustainability, the very first thing that comes to mind is the raw material that you use or how a product is made. But I think it's quite often overlooked. The way you treat your employees, how you are in your work environment with your employees, and the suppliers, the relationships that you build with your suppliers. Just thinking we are all part of this ecosystem. We are all this together. It's not about my business and, you know, what I can get out of it, but it's about all of us building something together. So this is, to me, very much sustainability as well.
Yeah, you've cracked the code on moving from me to we, from being selfish to selfless, and some might coin it as part of a circular economy. Of course, what you've done very well, I think, is your 5-step plan for sustainability as well. And for folks that may not know this, I'll just sort of introduce it, and then I'd like you to elaborate on it, because I think it's quite powerful, and it's almost it's kind of like a bit of a model that could be used in different industries, quite frankly. So your the 5-step plan is really about achieving this business sustainability, and it's a model to me that takes into account human beings, our need to be in relationships, to be collaborative, to be circular, of course. So if I'm simplifying these, my apologies, but I want to start and then you take over. So you want to communicate a powerful vision, which is this sort of I guess commitment to sustainability. You want to embrace strong regulations for sustainability. So moving away from compliance to kind of basically saying this is part of our business, like innovatively. Prioritize quality and durability. So this notion of resource usage, kind of what you're getting at, right? How do we repurpose? 4 is integrating sustainability into your core strategies. So how business goals can be aligned and systemically integrated with your sustainability practices. And then this notion of, like, I guess this is you, right? Lifelong learning, innovation, curiosity, and staying ahead, because sustainability isn't resting on the laurels of yesterday. It's like, what can we do differently to improve? So that sort of 5-step model, I think, is really cool. Tell me a bit why you felt compelled to come up with that, and again, then maybe help us understand its importance for these organizations you get to work with.
Well, I am often asked by startups I consult, by companies I work with. And you mentioned I work as an entrepreneurship expert at University of Oxford. Even there, they will always, almost quite often, ask me, how do I balance sustainability with profitability? How do I start a business that is sustainable? Almost like, you know, I'm still, even yesterday, got asked the same question. So I wanted to just distill it and say, here is how it's possible. And sustainability and business longevity, profitability can only go hand in hand, you know. And then I think sustainability, as I said, it's not just about the raw material that you use. It's about the entire business. Again, the quality of your products, the suppliers you work with. When it comes to innovation, I think, again, that point, sometimes you can think, I don't know if I have, what is innovation? For small and medium enterprises, this can sound daunting, for startups especially, or a student who is working on a venture. But even just combining your designers with teaming up your designers with manufacturers can lead to some ideas that you don't necessarily think of, which is what happened in our own company, for example. So just thinking of the entire system altogether and realizing it all comes together. So that's how I developed the 5-step framework. I had to ask myself, how is it that we have done it? And just summarizing it into a system.
Sounds self-serving in this case, but in one of my books called The Purpose Effect, I came up similarly with a 5-step model called the good deeds. And the deeds stand for delight your customer, so kind of go above and beyond, engage your employees so they know that you mean business in the world of good, ethical decisions. So every decision runs through a practice of which, well, what are we doing for our community, the environment, our people, humanity? The second D, of deeds is deliver fair practices. So don't consume more or take more than you can. What is circular? What can you repurpose? What can you reuse? And then serve all stakeholders, not just shareholders. And so what I'm hearing from you though is that you're saying, okay, it's not just fashion. Any organization, any industry can really be thinking through how to use the kind of 5 steps, because there's sustainability needs in any industry in any way in which we're an entrepreneur. So if you agree with that, I'm assuming you do. How do you help leaders see the light in your work?
I think just there are 2 things. One is, short-term thinking versus long-term thinking. And another one is slow. How much growth do you want and how fast? I think these 2 principles, these 2 factors will trip up what I've seen in my research and in the practical life, trip up the leaders, because they need to deliver growth. They need to, at the end of the year, say, okay, this is the profit that we were able to achieve. These are the markets that we have expanded into. But I think you really need to understand that often the very fast growth can actually eventually really put a hurdle on the company. And also, if you have this idea, okay, I'm going to create a business that is going to deliver a very high profit right now, but without thinking of the long-term effects. So we see in fashion quite often today, it's quite a problematic industry. We have Shein, which is this fast fashion brand. And my students ask me, sorry, I'll just get some water. Also journalists as well. They interviewed me for this company and they said, but they are making so much money. And there's a lot of people buying from them. And I said, yes, right now. But I really don't think in 10, 15, this is impossible for the company to continue unless they change something very, very drastically. So I think, because you mentioned my research looks at business longevity, from what I see in the literature, the companies that have stood the test of time, none of them think short term. And most of the time they are driven by community engagement, giving back, nurturing the environment. And I think this is basically the answer.
The 2 really key aspects of that I'd like to tease out a little bit is the propensity or proclivity of senior leaders, if not the board of these companies, being stuck in a mindset that is, as you say, short-term. So short-termism being, we need to operate for the quarter. on a fiscal year, what have you done for me lately? We need to make EBITDA or revenue or profitability for the quarter. And so it's panic, it's insanity. The culture gets sucked into this vortex of inanity because everyone is trying to find some sort of short-term revenue to hit, quote, the target. So it's anti-long-term. It's very much short-termism. But the second one there is sort of the fixation on growth and how much growth is actually enough in this day and age, which then allows people to say, well, we'll throw that out because we don't care. We're just thinking about growth. And so this whole mindset becomes very negative. And then the consequences, of course, are the earth, people's anxiety and health and their stress and so on. So how do you rationalize this for us, Neri? Please help me.
You summarized it very well. I think rationalizing, I'm quite hopeful in the sense that I feel we are having these conversations now as a society. I am hopeful that the mindset is shifting. So in the end, it's about your stakeholders to also really understand, your shareholder stakeholders to understand you can't keep growing at the rate that you used to grow. That's just not sustainable. And there has to be other factors that come into play, not just growth and profitability. And to really show here as researchers and also as practitioners, thought leaders, it's our job to show and back it with research. What we are saying can be backed with research.
So there's some really good examples out there. There's some terrible ones. What's one that comes to mind for you, either that you've been able to work with directly or that there's an organization or a crew of senior leaders that sort of saw the light and they made a change in the way in which that ultimately they needed to operate their organization?
Gosh, very good question. Patagonia is an example that everyone uses, but there are some other brands in fashion. I will give you the examples. Another Tomorrow, which is a degrowth brand. What I just talked about, they are not focusing on growing at a very, very high rate. There are non-profit firms like Remake, for example. They are saying, they are advocating for not buying. They are saying, don't keep consuming, don't keep buying new products. And this anti-growth, or not anti-growth, but degrowth principles that we are seeing, I would say, are quite encouraging.
I agree. So I'll give you a personal example. So I buy most, maybe not all, but most, 90% of my hats and my shoes from two ethical, sustainable organizations. My shoes come from a company in Vancouver called John Fluvog Shoes, Fluvogs. And my hats come from a millinery in Toronto called Lilliput Hats, a sort of 30-year-old millinery company. Karen Ruiz, who runs the Lilliput Hats, has this incredible eye for going to like shows, like one-of-a-kind shows, and people who are in the circular economy. And so she's grabbing little trinkets from like 100 years ago. She's going into garage sales and sort of like, these antique shops, and she's repurposing materials and repurposing trinkets, et cetera, for hats. So I've got hats where she's put in, little keyboards or typewriters that are little trinkets that go on my hat, repurposing ribbons from, 50 years ago, 60 years ago. So I'm curious then, what do we need to, whether it's fast fashion or whether it's luxury fashion or just the fashion industry, how do you, what are you doing, I guess, right, to help some of these leaders see, well, there's a different way of operating, this particular industry as a fashion entrepreneur?
Just with my articles, by talking, for example, being on your podcast, but also just the success of the company. I think it speaks for itself, showing how it can be done and that it is possible for it to be done. But as I mentioned, the question here, how much growth do you want and how fast do you want to grow and how profitable do you want to be? Because my company is successful, I will call it that. At the same time, I am not Hermes. I am still a small and medium-sized family-run business. We produce for very high-end Italian brands. Prada and Miu Miu are two of them. But at the same time, as I said, I am not Prada, I am not Louis Vuitton or Hermes, because I choose, not just choose, I'm relatively quite young firm, 25 years in the business.
Right.
And what worked for us and the way that we see it the right way is to not introduce new styles every 6 months or every 3 months. We have kept the same classic styles. Sometimes we will change the leather, but not often. We don't have this marketing where we encourage you to keep buying a new bag, a new wallet. We often will receive messages from clients that say, I've used the same belt or the same wallet for 15 years. In fact, that reminds me, I gave a gift to the president of University of Miami. I was doing a speech there when he came to the university first. And how many years later, 10 years later, we met in London last year, and he was still wearing the same belt.
That must make you smile.
Yes. So I think, how do you make the change? By being an example.
You, in your DNA, of course, is what I think is a very important characteristic and a trait, and that is resilience. Like, you are one resilient individual, and it seems as though that you can't, well, maybe you can, but you'll tell me, but to be sustainable and to shift to becoming more ethical in the way in which you operate a business as a senior leader, as an entrepreneur, somewhere along the way, there are things you have to overcome. There are things that you know are going to hit you, and you're like, oh my gosh, you have to persevere. So how do you rationalize sort of the need to be resilient and know that it's not smooth when you're making a shift to being a more purpose-driven, sustainable, socially responsible business practice and operations?
I think in today's day and age, everyone is hit with challenges. I think especially when you are trying to, I don't want to be a pioneer in sustainability. I don't see our company as that. But when you are trying to make it against odds with very limited resources, still be family run, we never raise any outside investment, of course you just face different challenges. But I think when it comes to resilience, every business in today's day and age has to be. But I've written quite a lot of articles on this topic about resilience, just psychological resilience and business resilience as well. And I think the findings of my research were quite surprising, because I thought, when I ventured out to learn about resilience and research it, I thought it will be about flexibility, it will be about strength. But what I found out was very different. It's not about strength. In fact, it's about saying, I don't know how to do this, or acknowledging that now it's a very challenging time. And it's never, once you have been resilient, doesn't mean that you will continue to be. You keep building. It's a muscle. You keep building. And it's not about saying I am the best, the strongest company, but recognizing, even it works on a personal level too, recognizing your weaknesses.
Well, I actually have a couple more questions. I want to dig a little bit deeper into this. Your life, your work, both, when you integrate the two, seems to be one of renewal. You keep coming up against these roadblocks, these obstacles, whether you're 11, whether you're in a class of 83, whether you're realizing you need an undergrad, a master's, a PhD, you seem to keep coming up against something. And then you've learned a strategy that, well, there's a roadblock here in the way. I need to find a way to get over the roadblock. So how would you characterize, I suppose, right, the skill and the muscle, Neri, that you have developed so others can learn from the way in which that you continuously renew yourself?
Then this is something nobody ever told me. It's the first time I'm hearing it, and it's, well, thank you. It's quite accurate in some ways. If I look back, I kept, Doric calls it reinventing yourself, but it's very much renewal. I think I have a very, I said it in the article as well, and earlier in our conversation, I have a very clear vision of what I would like to achieve. And it doesn't mean, but I also have flexibility. It's very hard to describe it. I have a vision. Let's say I know I want to get to Paris, but on the way to Paris, suddenly I may encounter a traffic accident. There may be divergence, just the road is blocked. I tend to accept that. I just accept whatever is happening and don't fight against it. And if the road leads me this way, I still keep the vision in my mind. I still know where I want to get to, or the feeling that I want to I think I will get when I get to my destination. But I do welcome those roadblocks or challenges and just work around them or work with them, but not against them. I think that's how I can describe it. But nobody asked me this before. So even now giving you the answer, I had to think about it. But that would be it, accepting what is.
Well, it's very profound. Accepting what is, not working against the challenges, but finding the wherewithal and the sort of additive muscular brain power that you need to develop in order to persevere and not go backwards. I think that's what I'm learning from you.
And, I really think if you also something I had to learn as well, to let go, to surrender, and to always know there is a bigger power, bigger energy, higher guidance, whatever you want to call it, guiding us, guiding our lives. And yes, I may have this vision where I want to get to. And if there is a diversion, I will follow that. So
I love it. Okay.
Even reminds me quickly, when I was 18, I graduated as a valedictorian in my high school. Nobody in my family has been to university, and it was, of course, I have to get this good education, and the possibility, the vision I had was to get into Turkish university. That's what's available. I want to get to the best university in my country. Everyone thought this is 100% going to happen because I have all A's. I'm very good at, at the tests and everything. To my big surprise, I failed the Turkish university entrance exam.
Wow.
And that's a huge roadblock. And, that means I have to go to work. So I accepted, even though it was difficult, I accepted, but also I started to look for alternatives. And that alternative led me to get financial aid that brought me to University of Miami.
Always looking for a way to continue the vision, although there might be a diversion.
Yes.
To get there.
Yes.
It's very powerful. So too, as well, my final question, I wanted to sort of tangentially ask you about your sustainability vision, your sustainability practice, the way in which that you're bringing social purpose, if I might call it that, to your practices, the way in which that your business operates, ethically, sustainably, et cetera. You also are committed to diversity and inclusion, which to me is actually a sustainability practice. And so whether you are hiring women of disadvantaged backgrounds, whether you're thinking about the age of the women or the men that you're in or the employee, you actually, to me, that's a social purpose sustainability practice, thinking about who makes up these organizations. So could you tell me a bit about your sort of leadership thinking when it comes to D&I?
You are spot on. In fact, take everything away. This is the thing I am most proud of that we were able to achieve is hiring people who are no longer in the workforce. These are women in Bulgaria. So we have two operations. One is a factory in Istanbul and another one in Bulgaria. In Bulgaria, I was able to work with the EU and the Bulgarian government to ensure and to put together a system that will allow us to hire women who are no longer able to get back into the workforce. They are women over the age of 60, 65, and unfortunately, the economy in Bulgaria, it's quite weak. They are unable, but they really want to work. So, and young men and women, also from disadvantaged backgrounds who didn't have access to education, they want to work, but they are not able. The over 90% of people we employ in Bulgaria are women from such backgrounds. And it was quite interesting because they all live in same or similar areas. This also, when I was filling in the sustainability certifications documents, in terms of travel, it also it reduces travel time, but that's another detail. In Turkey, we employ immigrants and refugees, particularly from Albania, from Syria, from eastern part of Turkey, who also have a lot of difficulty finding work in Turkey. I think this comes from the fact that I know what it feels like to be discriminated against. And I know how much it can hurt, how much it can be a block. And if someone comes and says, you know what, you can do it, there is a chance. If someone can be that light, you know that you are going to grab it with both hands. And that's what I hope to do. And I was very honored when we went through the sustainability certification with B Corp and Positive Luxury. It's an independent. These two companies don't talk to each other. They nominated us and they classified us as social innovators. I was very happy about that. To me, it's like better than profitability. It's better than seeing your name on a bag or on a company. It's just the most fulfilling part.
That's so gorgeous. And whether it's the people in Sofia or any of the other cities in Bulgaria and other countries that you're helping, you're doing a fantastic, ethical, purpose-first leadership style that I think many, many individuals and leaders need to look up to. It's quite a joy to listen in and understand more from what makes you tick, but the impact, the positive social impact that you're making in this world of ours. Dr. Neri Karra Sillaman, where can we find out more about you and your work?
You can follow me on LinkedIn, Neri Karra Sillaman. I am also on Instagram. It's prof.neri, and our company page is Neri Karra, and my consultancy firm is Moda Métiers.
We'll make sure that gets all into the show notes for folks that want to follow you and find out more about what you're up to. It's been such just a delight to get to know you a little better and to understand more about how your brain and your heart, most importantly, works. Two very important traits of you, Dr. Sillaman, is clearly thinking about where the intellectual side of empathy comes from. So you're thinking about what people are thinking and going through, but you're using your heart as well, equally so, to help people feel a better life. And for that, I think all of us thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It was just such a pleasure to talk to you. And you were able to pinpoint things I didn't even realize myself. So thank you.
Well, my kids don't like it when I do it, but when it's someone who's much smarter than me, I'm very happy to. Folks, you've been listening to another episode or watching of Leadership Now with me, Dan Pontefract, in the house today. The incredible Dr. Neri Karra Sillaman, author, entrepreneur, academic, all things above. Most importantly, what a great human being. We'll catch you next time on another episode. Thanks, Neri.